Every place you go, everyone's dancing mad. Every place you go, everyone's got it bad. There's a dance they do, they call it crazy feet. Take a chance and you will find it hard to beat. If you
It's magic because it's filled with rhythm and electricity. And if you've been sort of sleeping in a show, it'll wake you right up.
Let's go boom and you take me around.
I can make you mad with my feet. I can make you smile. I can make you cry. Because that's the beauty of tap.
Take my word, it's a kick when you get crazy feet.
When you tap, you're everything. You're the motion and you're the rhythms. And I think that's a major art form in that sense. You got to be a dancer, but you got to be a musician.
Tap dance, at its most serious and intricate, is far more sophisticated than ballet.
If you say, and your heart, no mistake, brother, you surely got crazy feet.
If you had asked me 10 years ago, is tap gonna live? I would say, I don't know. I don't know. But now I can say it is. It's alive and kicking, and it's still evolving.
Take my word, it's a kick when you get crazy feet.
Tonight, Omnibus celebrates the art of tap. Fred and Ginger, Ann Miller and Gene Kelly, Shirley Temple and Bill Bojangles Robinson. It was tap that created the golden age of Hollywood. Now, after decades in the wilderness, America's greatest dance form is pulling in the crowds again. Tap is back. The history of tap is dominated by Fred Astaire. It was tap and tap alone that made him one of Hollywood's greatest legends.
When you think about tap dancing, you almost first think of Fred Astaire. And he is not a handsome man. He is not a Clark Gable. He's not a Mel Gibson. He's thin. Let's be straightforward. He's skinny. The guy is skinny. But there is something that he did in his dancing that was unlike anything anybody had ever seen before. Tap dancing was very much of a formula dance where you would repeat a step 3 times and then do a break, do a step 3 times, do a break. Fred Astaire was one of the first people that the public ever saw who laced together steps. He also brought in ballet, jazz, all the things that were popular during the 20s and 30s, and he put it into his tap dancing. And for people at that era, that was something different.
Fred was just so suave and attractive and in control. And he was also blessed with Ginger Rogers, who liked to say that she did everything Fred did, but going backwards and in heels.
I think he was at his best when he would perform with Ginger Rogers, when he'd take a lady and dance with her. And she would follow him. It was so classy. That's when I really loved to see him, when he danced with a lady.
Tap was very, very seldom about romance before Astaire. But Astaire, that's Astaire's great innovation. He made dance be about something else other than just spectacle. He brought it in to the story.
There were some movies that Fred did where he didn't kiss the girl until the end of the movie, maybe just at the end. Just at the end, they would kiss and it would fade out. But the rest of the romance took place in the dance.
The glamour of tap lit up the stage in the 20s, but it was the arrival of talking pictures that took it to new heights.
In the very, very first true musical film, Broadway Melody, which opened early in 1929 and which established musical film as a leading genre, one woman comes out. She starts doing a vaudeville specialty, which was a tap dance on point. And the camera suddenly cuts in for close-ups of these feet on point. You see it closer than you could ever see it on the stage, and you hear it with more precision than you could ever hear in a theater seat. Hollywood did make tap even bigger than it had been on Broadway. And part of it was because of the way it could be photographed, the way it could be recorded and edited and post-synchronized. It made it perfect. So film idealized tap. It put it up on a pedestal.
People went to see them because they could relax. It didn't have a story worth a damn. It was either a boy meets girl, boy fights with girl, boy makes up with girl was usually the plot, and in between was all this gorgeous music, you see. There were never anything that would sprain your brain.
Panic gave way to despair. Overnight, the richest country in the world had spawned bread lines, soup kitchens, and apple sellers.
In the 1930s, the early 1930s, America experienced the worst depression it had ever known. There were no jobs, money was low, bread lines, I think everybody's heard about this. The spirit of this country had to be brought up somehow, and the motion picture industry really, really helped in this by bringing out these glossy, glamorous musical shows. And it took people out of their lives for 86 minutes and let them see something else that was joyful and fun. And what could be more fun than tap dancing?
Nobody could get under contract unless they could dance. Clark Gable, Greer Garson, we're talking Robert Taylor, we're talking Lana Turner. They had to be able to tap dance, and they all did. It wasn't easy, but they all danced. And I think you have to have the stamina. You can't be frail into it. Fred Astaire always said that tap dancing was next to ditch digging. And I guess he was right, because we worked very hard and we used to wring our towels out with sweat, you know. Not perspiration, sweat.
It was so wonderful when he was in this film with Eleanor Powell called Broadway Melody of 1940. And they were dancing toe to toe. This is the first time I saw Fred Astaire dance so hard. I'd never seen him work that hard before. Because Eleanor Powell, she can really go. I mean, now when he's dancing with Ginger Rogers or Sid Charisse, they are following him. But when he was dancing with Eleanor Powell, it seemed more like he was following her.
I fell in love with Eleanor Powell. So to me, she's the sexiest tap dancer around. But Eleanor Powell was the gal next door. And Ann Miller was the gal you met in the bar on a Friday night.
Go, girl, go.
I think directors and producers allowed you to see more of her legs Her movements are more sensual, I think. She's a little more coy. She gives you that come hither stare on occasion that you wouldn't have seen from Eleanor Powell.
I think when you get to Ann Miller, you see how sex and sex appeal can become part of tap. I remember one time I was at a screening and she comes out and does tapping looking straight at the camera. And you can feel a sexual charge. And I heard people in the audience catching their breaths. And let's face it, tap hadn't been about that before.
When I was at RKO, my legs were insured for $1 million.
How was I, Mr. Porter?
Wonderful.
Because if you're a star and to fall and break a leg or something, they don't want to be responsible, so they insure your body.
But the tappers who took more physical risks than anyone else were the Nicholas brothers.
The Nicholas brothers were just this extraordinary act. I mean, probably the greatest dancers to work in American movies. I mean, the things they could do, they were just extraordinary.
They could do anything. They had this amazing elasticity, this athleticism, and you see this amazing expression of optimism and sheer athletic virtuosity that they do that really has never been matched.
We call it classical tap. We would always use our hands. We used the whole body. And we had class, style, and grace, and personality. All these things went together, became the Nicholas Brothers style. I remember one evening at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel, I just saw Fred Astaire, and I said, "Hello there." So he turned around, he saw me, he said, "Ah." He said, "Mr. Nicholas." You see, I call him Mr. Astaire, and he calls me Mr. Nicholas. We respect each other. And he said, "I watched you and your brother in the film Stormy Weather." And he said, "Mr. Nicholas, I want to tell you something." I said, "Yes." He said, "That is the greatest number that I have ever seen on film." I said, "Well, thank you, Mr. Astaire." I said, "That's a great compliment coming from you." He says, "I'm telling you that because it's true."
All of the tap dancers who became stars in American cinema had their own personality, their own style. Fred Astaire we think of as the top hat, white tie, and tails, very glamorous, debonair. But then you have Gene Kelly. Gene Kelly was the everyman. He was the guy with the sleeves rolled up, with the penny loafers and the cuffs rolled up on his pant legs. He, I think, was important for a lot of American men because they say, "Hey, there's a guy I can relate to. I could never be Fred Astaire. That's not me, but that Gene Kelly guy, he's like me, you know? I'm like that." And I think that was very important during the World War II era, where the young men were going overseas. They had this image of this tough guy who tap danced.
Kelly's style was far more earthy and more overtly athletic than Astaire was. With Astaire, one of the main things was that you were not supposed to feel the effort. With Kelly, you could see the musculature, you could see the muscles working, you felt the effort, you could almost see and feel the sweat. And ultimately a sexuality also that he brought to his dance that Astaire had not had.
But romance and sex appeal couldn't compete with the greatest box office star of them all.
I think today it is hard for us to imagine the enormity of Shirley Temple's popularity. I think you have to draw comparisons like she was as popular as Madonna, as Britney Spears. Her performances were so compelling that just her name on the marquee alone brought in the audiences. There was no need to advertise the name of the film. If it was Shirley Temple, you were guaranteed to have the audience.
Every time a Shirley Temple movie came out in this country, enrollment in dancing schools skyrocketed. People that didn't have enough money for clothes would save their money to send their children to tap dancing school. It was that important in our culture.
I say, you ready? I just ain't got time to do no dancing today.
Like Fred Astaire, Shirley Temple had a regular on-screen partner, the brilliant Bill Bojangles Robinson.
Bill Robinson really was one of the main fountainheads of tap dance. He was one of the very first African-American dancers who was given exposure through film. He sort of forms a baseline against which all other tap dancers were to be judged.
Bill Robinson was great. I loved him. I thought he was probably the best 2-foot dancer I've ever seen in my life. Whatever he did on the right foot, he could do on the left foot. And he never did anything on the right that he didn't do on the left.
I want to do that too.
All right. Are you ready?
Yep.
Come on.
But behind the on-screen optimism of Bill and Shirley, there was a very different reality.
In American cinema in the 1930s, it was very difficult for black entertainers to make it into white cinema. It was next to impossible. If you go back and look at those Bill Robinson movies, if he's in a film with white actors, he's a butler. You know, he's a doorman. He's not just a person with a life. There were some black films that were made that he was in, that he was able to be an ordinary man, but not in the movies with Shirley Temple.
When he's there with little Shirley, it's almost a bit like two kids romping up this staircase.
What's going on around here? Oh.
Because we don't see black male tap dancers performing the way that Fred Astaire did with a Ginger Rogers, the idea of romance through dance, communicating in that way. Black male tap dancers seem to be desexed or sexually neutralized. And so Bojangles, as great as he was, I think that the Shirley Temple movies did do that to him.
Oh, what a gal, a real pipperoo. She's a fine chick. I'm gonna make...
My brother and I think we were lucky because they never asked us to be a shoe shine boy or be a waiter or to be a butler or any of those things. In fact, if they asked us to do it, we didn't do it. We didn't do it anyway. But we were always in movies for about 5 minutes. And my brother and I wanted to do more than that. We wanted to be written into the script. And I guess they only wanted us to sing and dance. I guess they dare not ask us to do anything else.
Never know if an apple is ripe till cider.
African Americans were almost entirely presented as performance acts within the larger film, and very rarely do they affect the plot at all. Very rarely do they interact with the white actors and actresses, and so they become self-contained units.
You like it, you like it, you strike a match and light it.
There'll be an interlude where you will see an African-American singer or an African-American dancer come on and just light up the screen with his or her energy. And these musical interludes could easily be cut out of these movies if the studios felt perhaps that Southern audiences didn't want to see African-Americans in the film. I think today when we see these old movies and when we know the history of African-American tap dancers in Hollywood, I think in many respects we feel cheated, that often there was another potential there was something else they could have done that the system didn't permit them to do. And given the chance, I think some of them would have been greater than Fred Astaire or Gene Kelly, but they didn't have that.
Hollywood's prejudices were all the more shameful because the origins of tap were rooted in African American history.
Tap's origins go back to plantation era practice where Christianity frowned on dancing, and the drum had been outlawed along with African dance. So the enslaved Africans found ways of making body percussion, foot percussion, using shuffle steps, syncopating steps, and found ways of moving where you weren't actually dancing in a European sense or a white sense, but you would move the feet without ever lifting or crossing the feet. So ultimately, a new form of dancing had been evolved through it, which had the rudiments or the root of tap dancing at its center.
The rhythm of my race is the result of our transplantation to American soil and our reaction in plantation days to tyranny. We do not dance it as a mere diversion. We dance it to express ourselves. Our souls react to the elemental, eternal rhythm.
For Black Americans, there is a lost language. All of our languages have been lost, so that therefore, simply because you don't have the Rosetta Stone, if you will, of a language, the rhythms of those languages, it's a bit ooh, but live inside of your body. And so that therefore tap and the way people walk or the way people sing are, to me, those lost languages manifesting themselves as a form of expression.
Every time I tap, I repeat rhythms that were created in ancient times. And if you know the old rhythm, the old drumming system, whenever you do patterns, they mean something. Like there's patterns of rhythms that can make a man crazy, or inviting someone. Like you have a rhythm, like a drumming system for wedding, for death, for celebration of life, danger, and all that. It's like the telephone. And we've learned things that were created way back. And sometimes when you dance, you just do this thing, and it's almost like the blood memory. It's past the music. It's the body rhythm. It's the heart. You feel a heartbeat. You feel the clash of the ground, but also the whole body. You can even hear the bones cracking.
Different claim for the origins of tap across the Atlantic in the north of England, and it begins with clog dancing.
Clogs emerged sometime in the very early 19th century with the Industrial Revolution in the newly developed towns that were being created around the mills in Yorkshire or Lancashire. The clogs raised you up above the puddles. they let in water a lot less than did other kinds of leather shoes. But one thing you notice immediately is that you can't walk quietly in clogs. And the most likely route of dancing in the clogs comes from being in the mills, where the big steam-driven mills were making rhythmic knocking sorts of sounds. You could dance and make the same sorts of rhythms.
By the middle of the 19th century, clog dancing had become a popular act on the music hall stage.
My father was a clog dancer on the music halls way back in the 1880s, and my mother's parents had been performers in the halls from the 1850s, and so my roots in show business go back a long, long time. Of course, clog dancing could be part of a comic get-up, and that was the norm in those days in the music hall. Almost as soon as we could walk, my father started to teach us dancing, turning the toe as he called it. So from about 4 years of age I was taught to clog dance. That was the only job there was as far as my father was concerned. He said, if you can learn to dance and do acrobatics and things like that, you can travel the world without saying a word, so you don't need to learn foreign languages.
Throughout the 19th century, millions of Europeans sailed to America in search of a new life, and they took their traditions with them.
Clog dancing comes into Boston and New York by the middle 1840s, 1843, 1844. And one had a lot of European ethnicities, English people, dancing in clogs, wearing costumes that look for all the world like Lancashire miners with knee breeches and waist sashes connected with something for the English Folk Dance and Song Society.
A vital clue to tap's evolution can be found in the folk dances of the Appalachian Mountains in America's Deep South.
The way I look at tap dancing is that it's one member of a large family of dances. And tap dancing and Appalachian clogging are part of an Anglo-Celtic family tree. They're based on Irish step dancing, Scottish step dancing, English clog dancing, and English step dancing. And those styles here in America, in the New World, mixed with each other. But they were changed by influences from Black African and African Americans.
So is tap British or American? Is it black or white? Its origins have long been a source of debate.
I remember Gene Kelly, he told me, he said, tap dancing started in Ireland. I said, what the hell are you talking about? Tap dancing didn't start in. He said, yes, it did. I said, wait a minute. Tap dancing is like American art form. The Irish dance is like a clog. Tap dancing is when you put taps on your shoes, the toe and the heel, and you do rhythm and syncopation. It's different.
What is tap? Tap is making sound with your feet, whether you had fiber soles or whether you had taps on your shoes or whether you didn't have. As long as you made a sound, that was tapping. And if anybody who says that it's a black thing, I think they're bragging about it and want to take credit for it, but I don't think it's strictly a black thing. The Irish were doing the Irish jig, that's dancing. I know I did a lot of the steps that I saw the Irish do because I liked what they were doing.
There are some people who really need to say it is an African American art form and we developed it. And then there's people who say, no, it's clog, it's Irish dancing, we started it. It means nothing to me, absolutely nothing. I feel like whoever started it did a good job, got a few other people interested in it, and it doesn't matter to me. I just love tap dancers.
The bottom line is none of us were there, so we don't know. We hear it through the stories of people who came before us. And so as I call myself a tap dance preservationist, I listen to all the different versions of the stories, and I've basically decided on what makes most sense to me. And the one that makes the most sense to me is that tap dancing was really born in the cities of America, primarily New York, because you had the different cultures there all living together. You had African Americans who had come up from the South. You had the Irish who had come over, and the English, and all of them with their ethnic percussive dances, all sharing these dances, seeing them stealing from each other these dances, these steps and ideas, and all of that combined with one other element, and that's the rhythm of the city. The rhythm of the city is very, very, very different than the rhythm of the countryside. The streetcars, elevators, jackhammers, all of that in combination with these dances. Those sounds going through people's minds and souls and coming out through their feet. And that, the beginning of the 20s, is when people first started putting taps on their shoes for shows, like a whole chorus line of girls putting taps on their shoes.
But it was the black dancers of Harlem who invented modern tap and turned it into a popular and sophisticated art.
I'm now putting on my wooden shoes, and I'll give you my idea of a tap routine to this number.
I got into New York in 1927, and my goodness, I never saw so many dancers.
Listen closely.
They had African American groups like Pete Peaches and Pete, Pete Peaches and Duke, Pete and Peaches before Pete Peaches and Duke, Sims and Bowie, the Three Gobs, the Four Highlanders. Oh my God, there were so many great dancing groups. Buck and Bubbles, Chuck and Chuckles. I remember when Chuck and Chuckles started.
During that time, there was shows at the Apollo Theater, the Harlem Opera House, different theaters. Every one of them had tap dancers. And there would be more than just one tap dancer. There'd be many of them. And they just loved it in the 20s.
It was in the Hoofers Club where I really got indoctrinated to tap dancing. The Hoofers Club had tables for poker and for blackjack, and they had a lunch counter, and behind the lunch counter was a room, I imagine about 12 by 16 with a piano. And everybody had learned to play dum 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 dum. Everybody had to learn to play that, played for each other. The challenge came when they said, let me see you do this, or do it again. Okay, you think you can dance? Come on down here. And I learned a lot from the Hoofers Club. At 94, I'm not too agile anymore, but this is the shim sham that my partner and I put together back in 1927 with 4 steps, and they have not been changed over a period of years, and this is the original way that it was done. And I say, chink-a-boom, 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 boom, chink-a-boom, chink-a-boom, boom, 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 chink-a-boom, 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 boom, boom, bop, bip, bop, bip, bop, bip, bop, 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 bippity, bip, bop, bop, bippity, bip, bop, bop, bip, bop, bip, bop, bip, bop, bop, bop. That's Shim Sham 2. And I'm tired.
But it was the legendary Cotton Club which made tap the most fashionable dance in America.
Everybody was there. Duke Ellington was there, Ethel Waters, Lena Horne, Bill Robinson, Tallulah Bankhead, Eleanor Powell, George Raft, Jimmy Durante, the Marx Brothers, Harold Lloyd, and Al Jolson, Charlie Chaplin, the best orchestras in the world like Cap Calloway, beautiful nightclub, the Cotton Club, in Harlem.
The Astaires and many of their young peers were going up to Harlem to learn these raunchy steps from black dancers. There was an incredible pull. It's the pull of the exotic erotic, isn't it? The kinds of things that Hollywood could grab on. In Harlem, early tap dancers talk about the fact that they were tapping out rhythms that then the percussionists in the bands picked up on. So they were actually borrowing from each other and making a kind of jazz culture.
1, 2, 3.
It'd be really great if somebody other than the drummer could do that.
Of course, one of the great arguments that we have, friendly arguments with musicians, is who invented jazz, the tap dancer or the musician.
I know it is. If the accent is too long, you're giving me a long chord.
I will. But then I have to do the accent with your hands.
No. It's, no. Don't give me the first accent, just give me a beat.
I know we influenced each other, there's no question. Because you can see the change of the different periods of jazz. If you lined up a tap dancer, say you had chick, 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 you know, this kind of two feel, and the tap dancer's going, then all of a sudden, you hear the drummer going, you start having swing.
Tap is jazz. It's not separated. You know, to me, I can't even have this concept of like looking at tap dance and jazz, because jazz came out of tap. All the great jazz musicians, they were influenced by tap, because when you see tap dancers and when you hear the rhythm of a good tap dancer, it's past the drums.
By the 1920s, modern tap had crossed the Atlantic to Britain. As far as its English roots were concerned, tap had come home.
Over here, clog dancing was generally dancing to old-fashioned tunes like jigs and reels and hornpipes and polkas, whereas in America they would dance to jazz. Tap brought the syncopation and Negro rhythms into it, and of course the American influence took over completely here. After the First World War, it became tap dancing, and from then on it was tap dancing, and it was tap dancing from my point of view all through my career in the theatre, because of course I also did acrobatics, and you can't do acrobatics in clogs.
I imagine that for the British people it was a surprise to see tap dancing, in that it was probably very familiar. So much of the vocabulary that we use in tap dancing is directly stolen from clog dancing. And maybe, I don't know what kind of surprise it was, a rude surprise or a delightful surprise. You know, hey, that's our dance, I don't know.
And now, to bring a twinkle to those magic eyes of yours, let's introduce those very versatile entertainers, the Shirley brothers.
My brothers Jim and Dan had done a double clog dancing act at the start of the First World War, and when tap dancing became very popular, my elder brother said, we're going to form a Five Shirley Brothers act now, which we did, and we started off at the Hope and Empire in London, the Five Shirley Brothers act, and we put it on. It was a storming success, stopped the show the first time, and we just went on from there, headlining in all the theatres all over the country.
In the 1930s, Britain set out to match Hollywood and create its own stars of tap.
When I look now at the films of the tapping, I realise the feet were magic. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I don't regard myself as that little girl anymore, but the feet were magic. The beats that came out were terrific, like machine guns. For what they were good. But to me, they were run-of-the-mill British films. And we had no glamour at all in this country, as far as I could see. The Brits took a long time to loosen up. We're like that as a race, and consequently it comes out in our dancing and everything else.
Dancing? Dancing? Surely they don't teach you that sort of thing as Madame Gauthier?
No, nobody does. When I hear this sort of music, it just happens.
Well,
We knew we couldn't compete with the American musicals. They were brilliant. And I think the feeling was here, let's stick to acting, forget the musicals. We haven't the money, and we haven't the people.
But by the mid-50s, even in America, tap was in trouble. A new kind of musical had taken centre stage.
Film musicals started being about integrated stories where the dance or the singing and the stories were supposed to be kept free-flowing. The film versions of the Rodgers and Hammerstein shows were really the lead here. And tap, which really calls attention to itself, didn't fit into that equation. So tap took a really precipitous plunge.
Up until Oklahoma, virtually every musical had tap dancing, at the very least a tap number. And then Oklahoma was just revolutionary in its choreography. And after that, choreographers wanted to do shows like that, and tap just seemed to vanish.
Even the novelty of television was not going to save tap. In fact, it made things worse.
Television ruined tap dancing. People could stay home and watch television. They wouldn't go out to the nightclubs anymore or go to the theater. And so, naturally, there was no place for tap dancers to do their thing.
All of the nightclubs, theaters from Chicago to Los Angeles started closing up. And when they closed, like Macombo's and the Ciro's and those places closed up, there was no place for tap dancers to work. I know tap dancers who were starving during the 50s.
I was telling all these other dancers, listen guys, when you go on television, make sure you do something different. Because some of the dancers, when they were going in the theaters and doing their dancing, they could do the same thing from city to city. But when you get on television, millions of people you see that one night. And then you come back on again and do the same thing. No. But they would do their act, and that was it. Because they didn't know anything else.
Tap dancing just stopped being popular. And it was a very sad time for tap dancers. There was no work. It just stopped. And great tap dancers like Bunny Briggs were relegated to cruise ships in order to eke out a living.
But in the mid-1980s, tap began the long journey back.
For me, the problems that I had with tap dancing, that I saw in tap dancing, were that we were stereotyped in terms of the music that we danced to. and that whenever I saw tap dancers, it was always done in a retrospective manner. They were dancing to music of the 40s and 30s. You know, tee 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 tee, which I like. I like that stuff. And I like to dance to that music sometimes. But I felt like I wanted to dance to a more contemporary sound. I didn't want to continue to be shrouded by a tuxedo or tails or a suit. I wanted to wear tight clothing so that I could add a certain sensuality and even sexuality to the dance.
Gregory Hines was a key component of making tap hip. Gregory's being significant in terms of turning it back into a popular art form. And very frequently, tap dances have been very specifically inspired by the rhythms, the popular rhythms of the day.
In the 1990s, a new stage show was to revolutionize tap and launch a whole new generation of dancers.
I think that noise funk helped to change the way a lot of people see tap dance, because our relationship to music, quite simply, is very different now. Whereas back then they might have listened to jazz and bebop, now we're listening to hip hop.
The new show told the history of Black America through tap dancing.
The story of noise funk reflected the way that we were able to deal with suppression and the things that were going on to us, with us in this country and being here. We were able to deal with it through dance.
Lord, Lord, now, Lord, Lord, now, Lord, 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 now, hey, Lord, yeah,
To me, it was about how, when you find yourself in a new landscape, how you must perpetually redefine yourself so that you have slaves landing, redefining themselves in relation to this world, then creating a rhythm in the South, then when moving north, the rhythms of an urban situation combine to create another kind of rhythm. The way tap was used in noise funk, I think, opened up a lot of people's eyes to the possibilities of how it can be used to convey story. And not just, isn't it wonderful to glide on air with, you know, Ginger Rogers in Central Park? So it's able to convey a whole series of very, very, very complicated emotional states, as all dance forms should.
When I watch basketball, I see the athletes really being dominant and aggressive, and that's how I take the stage, with that same dominance and aggression. Watching ice skaters leap off the ice and do triple turns. I slide all over the place and then jump and spin like I'm in a rink. Those are just some of the things that I bring to the stage, you know?
Who the hell cares if I act a fool when I takes me a swim in my swimming pool?
The show also tackled head-on tap's painful Hollywood history.
Keep on hopping and work them fancy.
To a new generation of tappers, the compromises of an earlier generation went a step too far.
I can make more money playing a maid than doing it for real.
I saw an act bringing down Bill Robinson. And it was like calling Bill Robinson Uncle Tom. I guess you heard that phrase. And I didn't like that at all.
Tell me, Uncle Huckabuck, where do babies come from? Uncle Huckabuck, why is the sky blue? Uncle Huckabuck, tell me another thing. Why do I make more money than you?
That whole scene in noise funk made a very specific statement.
Dance!
I mean, ultimately, what you saw watching the show is you saw what black people had to go through in order to survive as entertainers.
Give 'em flash, give 'em style, and a real big smile. Now that's tap.
They had two dancers who were supposed to be doing the Nicholas Brothers.
All your trust is fixing right. Be prepared to wing all night in those pearly whites. Moonbeam bright. Now that's tap.
They said that we were flash and grin. We were not flash and grin. They were sort of like bringing us down.
Yes, sirree. Believe you me. Whoop-dee-dee. Now that's tap.
I really felt hurt a little bit to hear that Fayard was insulted by it, because it was really us trying to do the best job that we could do impersonating, the likes of a Nicholas Brothers type act. At the same time, it was hard to swallow the whole reality of what you had to go through in order to survive in Hollywood, to have to be able to smile and put on this whole face, this whole air, and it really didn't have to do with rhythm or music per se, I feel like that era was quite tragic for tap dance.
Don't we look good? Let's take 'em out.
Sometimes younger African-American tap dancers view these earlier tap dancers as being sellouts. They see them as being saddled with rigidly stereotyped parts, comic servants, comic maids, and they dislike the idea of those bright smiles and those bright tap-taps for white people. But they don't view them in a certain historical context, the context that they should be viewed in.
So much of the time, specifically in African American culture, they did what they had to do. And we're not here. Our generation of African Americans, we're not here doing what we're doing if they didn't do what they did. Somebody had to do it.
I wasn't spoiled in a way by the idea that tap was meant to be done a certain ways with a certain outfit to a certain kind of music. Tap is wider than when we think it is. You have artists today tapping to hip-hop or anything. I was in Sri Lanka, I danced with Oriental drumming. You have, an African rhythm tap company downtown exploring different rhythms with African beats, and to me it's more of a golden age now because it's an age of fusion.
I think that the young dancers who have taken up tap have evolved new forms of tap that actually include a sense of a hip-hop aesthetic. None of the old forms have totally dropped off, but there are always new forms coming along as well.
People say history repeats itself, and we're all well aware of the fact that tap dance virtually fell off the map, for a couple, 10 to 20 of years, We're trying to be very careful as to that not happening again. And part of that is growing with the times, evolving with the music and the trends.
There's a wave of tap dancers coming. A great wave of really great tap dancers, young tap dancers, dancing to hip-hop music and rap music. So now a young guy who might hesitate to go and take a tap class because his friends might look down on him or give him a hard time, all of a sudden, it's not only cool for him to go take tap, but some of the friends will go too.
There's a surge of tap that's here. Everybody wants to take tap, is tapping, and shows have tap in it, and TV and everything. Tap has a certain energy that attracts people, and this is an energetic time. Everybody's working out somewhere, doing something, and the kids really really take to it very much, especially getting boys into it, you know. They can find their own steps, and they find themselves.
I would like to tap dance all over the world because, like, everybody will get to know you and all that stuff.
And 1, 2, 3, 4. Fantastic.
The tap dancing music that I would like to tap dance to is hip hop. I like to tap dance to jazz.
I like to tap dance to the same thing she said.
There definitely is a future, and the young generation will make it because it's about them, and they will take it into a place that nobody expected it to be, and it's happening now.
Doing the Olympic opening ceremony was fantastic because I'd never worked with that volume of dancers before. I think we had 1,300 tap dancers. And yeah, our biggest fear was about the sound and how these kids are going to be able to hear their music and all that sort of stuff. And the number actually didn't really come together until the night. And when it did, it was a fantastic thrill. All the kids that actually did it, all the volunteers, they had a great time, you know. When they ran out of the stadium after it finished, you know, they were just so excited and, you know, they really thought they'd pulled something off. Tap Dogs is a very energetic style of dance, and we deliberately go out to do a boisterous style of tap dance because we're sort of built that way. Some of these guys look like footballers that are in Tap Dogs, and for them to be doing a romantic number around the stage, for them I don't think would work. But at the end of the day, it's the power and the energy and the sweat for our show that comes off.
I'm waiting now for the next step, which I think will be terribly exciting, when this new amazing technicality that a lot of the young dancers have gets combined with style. If and when that happens, and I'm hoping the answer will be when that happens, I'll be very thrilled to see what happens.
Tap has stood the test of time and the test of the downtime, and as a dance form, it has proven its durability and its tenacity, and I get a lot of satisfaction out of that. You know, we're still tap dancing.
Next week, Omnibus celebrates the genius of Stanley Spencer, one of the most individual and uncompromising painters of the 20th century. In his unusual mix of sexual and religious paintings, he used his own, sometimes bizarre personal life as subject matter for his most provocative images.